Hey everybody, how you doing? Mr. Hancock here. Today we're going to be talking just for a moment about. Sorry, I'm looking at my crazy hair in this. Today we're going to be talking about briefly Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Something we want to really keep in mind here is as always, go back to the first week and pay close attention to what Romanticism is and the really key components to Romanticism, and really consider those as you go forward. So I don't have to give you a deep summary or a deep analysis of these works that we're reading. In a sense, all you need to do is go and consider those points and look for those as you go forward and try to find out what the point is, what the message is that you're seeing about those points in that work. So, for instance, you're not going to see every one of those particular points coming through in every specific work. But with Coleridge, what we see here, and one thing that's very important to see with Coleridge, is that he did have quite a problem with opium at one point. He discovers opium, and so he has some big problems with that, especially later in his life when he really writes some pretty wild stuff like Kubla Khan and so on. So I'm not saying that has anything directly to do with Rime of the Ancient Mariner, but my point is this, is that what we see through his works is a big focus on imagination. So, going back and looking at our key components of Romanticism, the power of imagination. We see that with John Keats as well, but the power of imagination and what that has on a human being and what that has to do with the individual and how that affects us is something that's very, very important here as we go forward. So when you dig in to Rime of the Ancient Mariner, really keep that in mind. There are some other things to really think about. So looking at the story in general here, what we have is a story within a story. A gentleman is going off to a wedding, and an old man stops him and says, I have to tell you the story of a warning. And he goes into telling the story of how they killed the albatross, and hell is brought upon him, and everything from there. So you can read that and see. But, so looking at the story here, we're seeing here that we have, first off, notice that it's a big focus on the individual. And I can't really stress how important that is, because before this, in the Age of Enlightenment, or Age of Reason, it was not about the individual, it was about the collective whole, the group. And I always, refer to like Star Trek kind of terms and be like, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. But the big difference now that we see with Romanticism is that has changed. It is important to see the individual's worth, the individual emotions, and what matters there, and the imagination of the individual, and how that defines us, and how our experiences come to be. That's Romanticism. So with that being the point, really try to look into that and see, all right, who are the individuals we have? What do we see about individual development, especially the mariner? And really see what is it showing us and everything. So, and I put it that way because I'm not saying that there's a wrong answer, and I'm not saying there's only one right answer. It's kind of like when we're looking at poetry like this, it's like all of us get outside and we stand around a really big tree, and we're staring at this tree. All of us are going to have different perspectives. We're going to see things that other folks don't see. We're all looking at the same tree, and we're all inspecting a tree. We don't have any wild, crazy ideas that have nothing to do with the tree. It's all about the tree, and it's all aspects that are clear within the tree. We're just having to look at it from a certain point of view. And so that's the way to kind of consider this here. So I want to put my prompts, especially discussion board and journal prompts, in a general way, because I want everybody to kind of take a look at it in their own particular sense. And you'll also notice that when you go to the discussion boards, in the journals, you post it, and the only person that can see it is me. But in the discussion boards, you can't see what other people put in there until you post your first initial response, and then you can see other people's responses and you can talk to them. But you have to put your own first. I want to see what you say about that content first, without any kind of interpretation or any type of influence from outside of that, okay? So that's where we want to go with this. Again, really think in terms of imagination, the power of the imagination, the individual and the individual experience and emotion in certain situations. And where does that show us? Think about that, and how do I apply? What does that matter now? Apply it to now, to you as a person and individual. Imagination. Is imagination important? And I don't necessarily mean get lost in comic books or video games, because not everybody's into that, and it doesn't matter. But the imagination, the deeper inner thoughts of every individual person is different, and yet we're all the same in the sense that we do have them, and we all have certain needs and so on. So it's a big focus on the individual, okay? So going into that, think of it in those terms and look for those things, okay? Also, let me know if you have any questions, y'all. One thing that I am going to get questions about, really, and we'll talk about this later, is before we get into our actual exams, I do not provide a study guide, because when it comes to this, it's not about you memorizing content and puking it back up for me. I don't want that, okay? So in this class, a study guide does you absolutely no good. I don't want you to repeat back to me what I told you. What matters is that you were able to take a text, analyze it, make sense of it, and provide evidence as to how you come to that conclusion. So in a way, it's like essentially argumentative essay writing. So when you go into your exam next week or the week after, I have to look back at the schedule, I'm not going to give you a study guide. Your study guides are your discussion boards. They're your journals. They're your handout prompts. So yeah, that means going back and studying and understanding. And I always tell everybody that when you do get the test, when you do sit down and open up the test, and everything's new in front of your face, if you've read, if you've studied, if you've contributed correctly, you will not be surprised. Now, if you've gone and looked up on Spark Notes or something and just got some information and wrote what you needed to write in your discussion board and moved on, yeah, the test is going to be a nightmare, because you're going to have to take those pieces and make sense of them. And provide evidence and everything of that sense, okay? So anyway, that's coming down the pipe. It's not obviously this week, but I want you to just know that. So when you do go back to week one, go back and look at Blake, go back and look at Wordsworth, go back and look at whoever, Coleridge, and look through the handouts, look through the study points, the key characteristics of Romanticism, and please keep that in mind, all of them, as you go forward looking into the text, okay? If you have any questions, y'all, let me know. That's all I have. Get at it this week and let me know if you need anything. Thanks.